Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Kai, how's it going?
Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. Oh, I'm good. It's good. Yeah. So good to see so many faces.
Right?
Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Voice crack.
Hello.
Anna.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Andy.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going good. It's really hot in Portland.
How hot?
It's like 86 today.
Hot.
And it was like real muggy too.
Right.
Other than that, we're doing good.
That's kind of what it was like here, right?
Yeah.
We went inner tubing today
Oh, fun.
down the river.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's
That's
super fun.
Olivia, it's so nice to see you on the deck.
Yeah, familiar deck.
James. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Lou.
I guess it's a porch. Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
James says he's driving to dinner, but he will be tuned in.
Hi, Kai. Hi, Lou. Just seeing people I haven't seen in a really long time.
We'll allow some time for folks to trickle in. And in terms of like the craft nature of this video call, for folks who are joining for the first time, my mom and I were talking about the potential, if anyone's interested, in having a package shipped to them with embroidery materials and a piece that has an image of a native plant that's been grown on either the metabolic or the moon site. So you can make your own embroidery of a native plant that's already been printed for you. If that's of interest to you, you can also craft whatever you'd like. You can also embroider something, you're working on yourself. The goal of the native plant embroidery aspect of it was to embroider the plants growing on the moon and metabolic sites. But Jen, I don't know if you have more to add to that in terms of like the craft nature of things.
I'm sorry, I was working on something else, so I didn't totally catch everything. But as far as getting kits, all you need to do is send us your email, and I will follow up and get your address, and we can send those out to you. Did you cover that?
Yeah, well, no, that was great. Yeah. So you can send that to info@metabolic, right?
Correct.
Or you can put it in
the chat.
Yeah, and then
And I'll add that when we started this embroidery circle, the end goal was that each kid had a return envelope in it, and that the embroideries that were made during this time would then be sent back to the studio and stitched together in a larger quilt that would subsequently be exhibited and shown on our website.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay.
Hi there. Should we start reading?
Probably.
Cool. Well, today we're going to be reading chapter 2 of Angela Davis's Are Prisons Obsolete? And in the email that went out, we also sent the syllabus that we're going to have for the next 12 weeks of readings. And if anyone's interested in reading along, like tonight, Livia is going to help us do the reading. Would it be possible to mute? I think that someone's phone is giving feedback a little bit for us. Do you see that, Jen? I don't know. There we go. So if anyone has any feedback with the syllabus, or if there's anything that people, want to share or want to add, or feel free to contact us, and we can, this is a work in progress, and the goal really is just to learn and learn together as a community about abolition and all the decades of work that's gone into this concept and movement, and also have some time to craft while doing it. So if anyone tonight is interested in reading with us, we have the PDF of this, and I can easily send it to you. So if you want to just put in the chat that you're interested, actually, I can just put the PDF in the chat, and then you don't even have to. Actually, I just sent it to Olivia. So then.
Here, I can put it in the chat too.
Oh, thank you. We have a printed out version, I realize, so it's, yeah, but basically what we're gonna do is I'll read a couple couple paragraphs, Ryan will read a couple paragraphs, and then Livia will read a couple paragraphs, and that way it's easier, because obviously it's a lot to read for a long period of time. And also the goal, if anyone else wants to read, is why that would be nice for me at least, is it feels like then we're collectively, reading together, which sounds more fun.
You want to start?
Sure,
you
I'll
want,
start.
You want me to start?
I'll start. Okay, so chapter 2, Slavery, Civil Rights, and Abolitionist Perspectives Toward Prison. This is a quote. Advocates of incarceration hoped that the penitentiary would rehabilitate its inmates, whereas philosophers perceived a ceaseless state of war between chattel slaves and their masters. Criminologists hoped to negotiate a peace treaty of sorts within the prison walls. Yet herein lurked a paradox. If the penitentiary's internal regime resembled that of the plantation so closely that the two were often loosely equated, how could the prison possibly function to rehabilitate criminals? Adam J. Hirsch. The prison is not the only institution that has posed complex challenges to the people who have lived with it and have become so inured to its presence that they could not conceive of society without it. Within the history of the United States, the system of slavery immediately comes to mind. Although as early as the American Revolution, anti-slavery advocates promoted the elimination of African bondage, it took almost a century to achieve the abolition of the peculiar institution. White anti-slavery abolitionists such as John Brown and William Lloyd Garrison were represented in the dominant media of the period as extremists and fanatics. When Frederick Douglass embarked on his career as an anti-slavery orator, white people, even those who were passionate abolitionists, refused to believe that a black slave could display such intelligence. The belief in the permanence of slavery was so widespread that even white abolitionists found it difficult to imagine black people as equals. It took a long and violent civil war in order to legally disestablish the peculiar institution. Even though the 13th Amendment to the US Constitution outlawed involuntary servitude, white supremacy continued to be embraced by vast numbers of people and became deeply inscribed in new institutions. One of these post-slavery institutions was lynching, which was widely accepted for many decades thereafter. Thanks to the work of figures such as Ida B. Wells an anti-lynching campaign was gradually legitimized during the first half of the 20th century. The NAACP, an organization that continues to conduct legal challenges against discrimination, evolved from these efforts to abolish lynching.
Segregation ruled the South until it was outlawed a century after the abolition of slavery. Many people who lived under Jim Crow could not envision a legal system defined by racial equality. When the governor of Alabama personally attempted to prevent Arthurian Lucy from enrolling in the University of Alabama, his stance represented the inability to imagine black and white people ever peaceably living and studying together. Quote, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever are the most well-known words of this politician who was forced to repudiate them some years later when segregation had proved far more vulnerable than he could have imagined. Although government corporations and the dominant media try to represent racism as an unfortunate aberration of the past and has been relegated to the graveyard of U.S. history, it continues to profoundly influence contemporary structures, attitudes, and behaviors. Nevertheless, anyone who would dare to call the reintroduction of slavery, the organization of lynch mobs, or the reestablishment of legal segregation would be summarily dismissed. But it should be remembered that the ancestors of many of today's most ardent liberals cannot have imagined life without slavery, life without lynching, or life without segregation. The 2001 World Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerances held in Durban, South Africa, divulge the immensity of the global task of eliminating racism. There may be many disagreements regarding what counts as racism and what are the most effective strategies to eliminate it. However, especially with the downfall of the apartheid regime in South Africa, there is a global consensus that racism should not define the future of the planet. I have referred to these historical examples of efforts to dismantle racist institutions because they have considerable relevance to our discussion of prisons and prison abolition. It is true that slavery, lynching, and segregation acquired such a stalwart ideological quantity that many, if not most, cannot foresee their decline and collapse. Slavery, lynching, and segregation are currently compelling examples of social institutions that, like the prison, were once considered to be as everlasting as the sun. Yet, in the case of all three examples, we can point to movements that assumed that radical stance of announcing the obsolescence of these institutions. It may help us gain perspective on the prison if we try to imagine how strange and discomforting the debate about the obsolescence of slavery must have been to those who took the quote peculiar institution for granted, and especially to those who reap direct benefits from this dreadful system of racist exploitation. And even though there was widespread resistance among black slaves, there were even some among them who assumed that they and their progeny would be always subjected to the tyranny of slavery. Olivia, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll take over.
Sure.
I've introduced three abolition campaigns that were eventually more or less successful to make the point that social circumstances transform and popular attitudes shift, in part in response to organized social movements. But I have also evoked these historical campaigns because they all targeted some expression of racism. U.S. chattel slavery was a system of forced labor that relied on racist ideas and beliefs to justify the relegation of people of African descent to this legal status of property. Lynching was an extra-legal institution that surrendered thousands of African American lives to the violence of ruthless racist mobs. Under segregation, Black people were legally declared second-class citizens for whom voting, job, education, and housing rights were drastically curtailed, if they were available at all. What is the relationship between these historical expressions of racism and the role of the prison system today? Exploring such connections may offer us a different perspective on the current state of the punishment industry. If we are already persuaded that racism should not be allowed to define the planet's future, and if we can successfully argue that prisons are racist institutions, this may lead us to take seriously the prospect of declaring prisons obsolete. For the moment, I am concentrating on the history of anti-Black racism in order to make the point that the prison reveals congealed forms of anti-Black racism that operate in clandestine ways. In other words, they are rarely recognized as racist. But there are other racialized histories that have affected the development of the US punishment system as well, the histories of Latinos, Native Americans, and Asian Americans. These racisms also congeal and combine in the prison. Because we are so accustomed to talking about race in terms of Black and white, we often fail to recognize and contest expressions of racism that target people of color who are not Black. Consider the mass arrests and detention of people of Middle Eastern, South Asian, or Muslim heritage in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 attacks on the Pentagon and World Trade Center. This leads us to two important questions. Are prisons racist institutions? Is racism so deeply entrenched in the institution of the prison that it is not possible to eliminate one without eliminating the other? These are questions that we should keep in mind as we examine the historical links between US slavery and the early penitentiary system. The penitentiary as an institution that simultaneously punished and rehabilitated its inhabitants was a new system of punishment that first made its appearance in the United States around the time of the American Revolution. This new system was based on the replacement of capital and corporal punishment by incarceration. Maya?
Imprisonment itself was new neither to the United States nor to the world, but until the creation of this new institution called the penitentiary, it served as a prelude to punishment. People who were to be subjected to some form of corporal punishment were detained in prison until the execution of the punishment. With the penitentiary, incarceration became the punishment itself, as is indicated in the designation penitentiary. Imprisonment was regarded as rehabilitative, and the penitentiary prison was devised to provide convicts with the conditions for reflecting on their crimes, and through penitence, for reshaping their habits and even their souls. Although some anti-slavery advocates spoke out against this new system of punishment during the Revolutionary period, the penitentiary was generally viewed as a progressive reform linked to the larger campaign for the rights of citizens. In many ways, the penitentiary was a vast improvement over the many forms of capital and corporal punishment inherited from the English. However, the contention that prisoners would refashion themselves if only given the opportunity to reflect and labor in solitude and silence disregarded the impact of authoritarian regimes of living and work. Indeed, there was significant similarities between slavery and the penitentiary prison. Historian Adam J. Hirsch has pointed out, one may perceive in the penitentiary many reflections of chattel slavery as it was practiced in the South. Both institutions subordinated their subjects to the will of others. Like Southern slaves, prison inmates followed a daily routine specified by their superiors. Both institutions reduced their subjects to dependence on others for the supply of basic human services such as food and shelter. Both isolated their subjects from the general population by confining them to fixed habitat. And both frequently coerced their subjects to work, often for longer hours and for less compensation than free laborers. As Hirsch observed, both institutions deployed similar forms of punishment, and prison regulations were, in fact, very similar to the slave codes, the laws that deprived enslaved human beings of virtually all rights. Moreover, both prisoners and slaves were considered to have pronounced proclivities to crime. Both sentenced to the penitentiary in the North, white and black alike, were popularly represented as having a strong kinship to enslaved people. The ideologies governing slavery and those governing punishment were profoundly linked during the earliest period of U.S. history. While free people could be legally sentenced to punishment by hard labor, such a sentence would in no way change the conditions of existence already experienced by slaves. Thus, as Hirsch further reveals, Thomas Jefferson, who supported the sentencing of convicted people to hard labor on road and water projects, also pointed out that he would exclude slaves from this sort of punishment. Since slaves already performed hard labor, sentencing them to penal labor would not mark a difference in their condition. Jefferson suggested banishment to other countries instead.
Particularly in the United States, race has always played a central role in constructing presumptions of criminality. After the abolition of slavery, former slave states passed new legislation revising the slave codes in order to regulate the behavior of free blacks in ways similar to those that had existed during slavery. The new black codes prescribed a range of actions such as vagrancy, absence from work, breach of job contracts, the possession of firearms, and insulting gestures or acts. That was criminalized only when the person charged was black. With the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, slavery and involuntary servitude were putatively abolished. However, there was a significant exception. In the wording of the amendment, slavery and involuntary servitude were abolished, quote, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. According to the black codes, there were crimes defined by state law for which only black people could, quote, duly convict. Thus, former slaves who had recently been extricated from a condition of hard labor for life could be legally sentenced to penal servitude. In the immediate aftermath of slavery, the southern states hastened to develop a criminal justice system that could legally restrict the possibilities of freedom for newly released slaves. Black people became the prime targets of developing convict lease system, referring to many as reincarnation of slavery. The Mississippi Black Codes, for example, declared vagrant, quote, anyone who was guilty of theft and had run away from a job apparently, was drunk, was wanted in conduct or speech, had neglected job or family, handled money carelessly, and all other idle and disorderly person. Thus, vagrancy was coded as a black crime.
Can we pause for a second? I just think it's really important. That particular sentence really deeply struck me. The last sentence, or the last section, any idle or disorderly person. Idle. Like, I don't know. I just think that's important to really stress. Like, that could be, anyone who was idle could be
sent to jail
and criminalized for being idle. It's insane.
Thus, vagrancy was coded as a black crime, one punishable by incarceration and forced labor, sometimes on the very plantations that previously had thrived on slave labor. Mary Ellen Curtin's study of Alabama prisoners during the decades following emancipation discloses that before the 400,000 black slaves in that state were set free, 99% of prisoners in Alabama's penitentiaries were white. As a consequence of the shifts provoked by institution of the black codes, with a short period of time, the overwhelming majority of Alabama's convicts were black. She further observes, quote, although the vast majority of Alabama's antebellum prisoners were white, the popular perception was that the South's true criminals were its black slaves. During the 1870s, the growing number of black prisoners in the South further buttressed the belief that African Americans were inherently criminal and in particular prone to larceny. Olivia, want to take over?
Yeah. In 1883, Frederick Douglass had already written about the South's tendency to, quote, impute crime to color. When a particularly egregious crime was committed, he noted, not only was guilt frequently assigned to a black person regardless of the perpetrator's race, but white men sometimes sought to escape punishment by disguising themselves as black. Douglass would later recount one such incident that took place in Granger County, Tennessee, in which a man who appeared to be black was shot while committing a robbery. The wounded man, however, was discovered to be a respectable white citizen who had colored his face black. The above example from Douglass demonstrates how whiteness, in the words of legal scholar Cheryl Harris, operates as property. According to Harris, the fact that white identity was possessed as property meant that rights, liberties, and self-identity were affirmed for white people while being denied to black people. The latter's only access to whiteness was through passing. Douglass's comments indicate how this property interest in whiteness was easily reversed in schemes to deny black people their rights to due process. Interestingly, cases similar to the one Douglass discusses above emerged in the United States during the 1990s. In Boston, Charles Stewart murdered his pregnant wife and attempted to blame an anonymous black man. And in Union, South Carolina, Susan Smith killed her children and claimed that they had been abducted by a black carjacker. The racialization of crime, the tendency to, quote, impute crime to color, to use Frederick Douglass's words, did not wither away as the country became increasingly removed from slavery. Proof that crime continues to be imputed to color resides in the many evocations of racial profiling in our time. That it is possible to be targeted by the police for no other reason than the color of one's skin is not mere speculation. Police departments in major urban areas have admitted the existence of formal procedures designed to maximize the numbers of African Americans and Latinos arrested, even in the absence of probable cause. In the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, vast numbers of people of Middle Eastern and South Asian heritage were arrested and detained by the police agency known as Immigration and Naturalization Services, INS. The INS is the federal agency that claims the largest number of armed agents, even more than the FBI. Maya?
During the post-slavery era, as Black people were integrated into Southern penal systems, and as the penal system became a system of penal servitude, the punishments associated with slavery became further incorporated into the penal system. Whipping, as Matthew Mancini has observed, was the preeminent form of punishment under slavery, and the lash, along with the chain, became the very emblem of servitude for slaves and prisoners. As indicated above, Black people were imprisoned under the laws assembled in the various Black codes of the Southern states, which, because they were rearticulations of the slave codes, tended to racialize penalty and link it closely with previous regimes of slavery. The expansion of the convict lease system and the county chain gang meant that the antebellum criminal justice system, which focused far more intensely on Black people than on whites, defined Southern criminal justice largely as a means of controlling Black labor period. According to Mancini, Among the multifarious, debilitating legacies of slavery was the conviction that Blacks could only labor in a certain way, the way experience had shown them to have labored in the past, in gangs subjected to constant supervision and under the discipline of the lash. Since these were the requisites of slavery and since slaves were Black, Southern whites almost universally concluded that Blacks could not work unless subjected to such intense surveillance and discipline. Scholars who have studied the convict lease system point out that in many important respects, convict leasing was far worse than slavery, an insight that can be gleaned from titles such as One Dies, Get Another by Mancini, Worse Than Slavery, David Oshinki's work on Parchman Prison, and Twice the Work of Free Labor, Alex Lichtenstein's Examination of the Political Economy of Convict Leasing. Slave owners may have been concerned for the survival of individual slaves who, after all, represented significant investments. Convicts, on the other hand, were leased not as individuals, but as a group, and they could be worked literally to death without affecting the profitability of a convict crew. According to descriptions by contemporaries, the conditions under which leased convicts and county chain gangs lived were far worse than those under which Black people had lived as slaves. The records of Mississippi plantations in the Yazoo Delta during the late 1880s indicate that, quote, the prisoners ate and slept on bare ground without blankets or mattresses, and often without clothes. They were punished for slow hoeing, quote unquote, 10 lashes, sorry planting, quote unquote, 5 lashes, and, quote, being light with cotton, 5 lashes. Some who attempted to escape were whipped, quote, till the blood ran down their legs. Others had a metal spur riveted to their feet. Convicts dropped from exhaustion, pneumonia, malaria, frostbite, consumption, sunstroke, dysentery, gunshot wounds, and, quote, shackle poisoning, the constant rubbing of chains and leg irons against bare flesh. The appalling treatment to which convicts were subjected under the lease system recapitulated and further extended the regimes of slavery. If, as Adam J. Hirsch contends, the early incarnations of the U.S. penitentiary in the North tended to mirror the institution of slavery in many important respects, the post-Civil War evolution of the punishment system was in very literal ways the continuation of a slave system which was no longer legal in the, quote, free world. The population of convicts whose racial composition was dramatically transformed by the abolition of slavery could be subjected to such intense exploitation and to such horrendous modes of punishment precisely because they continued to be perceived as slaves.
Historian Mary Ann Curtin has observed that many scholars have acknowledged the deeply entrenched racism of the post-Civil War structures of punishment in the South have failed to identify the extent to which racism colored common sense understandings of the circumstances surrounding the wholesale criminalization of Black communities. Even anti-racist historians, she contends, do not go far enough to examine the ways in which Black people were made into criminals. They point out, and this, she says, is indeed partially true, that in the aftermath of emancipation, large numbers of Black people were forced by their local social situation to steal in order to survive. It was the transformation of petty thievery into felony that relegated substantial numbers of Black people to the, quote, involuntary servitude legalized by the 13th Amendment. What Curtin suggests is that these charges of theft were frequently fabricated outright. They, quote, also served as subterfuge for political revenge. After emancipation, the courtroom became an ideal place to exact racial retribution. In this sense, the work of the criminal justice system was intimately related to the extra-legal work of lynching. Alex Lichtenstein, whose study focuses on the role of the convict lease system in forging a new labor force for the South, identifies the lease system along with the new Jim Crow laws as the central institution of the development of racial state. He writes, New South capitalists in Georgia and elsewhere were able to use the state to recruit the discipline a convict labor force, and thus were able to develop their state's resources without creating a wage labor force, and without undermining planters' control of black labor. In fact, quite the opposite. The penal system could be used as a powerful sanction against rural blacks who challenged the racial order upon which agricultural labor control relied. Lichtenstein discloses, for example, that the extent to which the building of Georgia railroads during the 19th century relied on black convict labor. He further reminds us that as we drive down the most famous streets in Atlanta, Peachtree Street, we ride on the backs of convicts. The renowned Peachtree Street and the rest of Atlanta's well-paved roads and modern transportation infrastructure, which helped cement its place in the commercial hub of the modern South, were originally laid by convicts. Lichtenstein's major argument is that the convict lease was not an irrational regression. It was not primarily a throwback to pre-capitalist modes of production. Rather, it was a most efficient and most rational deployment of racist strategies to swiftly achieve industrialization in the South. In this sense, he argues, quote, convict labor was in many ways in the vanguard of the region's first tentative ambivalent steps toward modernity. Liv, you want to take over?
Yeah. Those of us who have had the opportunity to visit 19th century mansions that were originally constructed on slave plantations are rarely content with an aesthetic appraisal of these structures, no matter how beautiful they may be. Sufficient visual imagery of toiling black slaves circulate enough in our environment for us to imagine the brutality that hides just beneath the surface of these wondrous mansions. We have learned how to recognize the role of slave labor, as well as the racism it embodied. But black convict labor remains a hidden dimension of our history. It is extremely unsettling to think of modern industrialized urban areas as having been originally produced under the racist labor conditions of penal servitude that are often described by historians as even worse than slavery. I grew up in the city of Birmingham, Alabama, because of its mines, coal and iron ore, and its steel mills that remained active until the deindustrialization process of the 1980s, it was widely known as, quote, the Pittsburgh of the South. The fathers of many of my friends worked in these mines and mills. It is only recently that I have learned that the black miners and steel workers I knew during my childhood inherited their places in Birmingham's industrial development from black convicts forced to do this work under the lease system. As Curtin observes, quote, many ex-prisoners became miners because Alabama used prison labor extensively in its coal mines. By 1888, all of Alabama's able male prisoners were leased to two major mining companies, the Tennessee Coal and Iron Company, TCI, and Sloss Iron and Steel Company. For a charge of up to $18.50 per month per man, these corporations leased or rented prison laborers and worked them in coal mines. Learning about this little acknowledged dimension of Black and labor history has caused me to reevaluate my own childhood experiences. Maya?
Emily, I'm going to hand that. You can, if you want to read now. Oh, we are on page 36.
Page 36.
One of the many.
I think that maybe your audio isn't working.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
That's all right.
We're almost done.
Yeah,
we only have like a page.
Thank you, though. One of the many ruses racism achieves is the virtual erasure of historical contributions by people of color. Here we have a penal system that was racist in many respects. Discriminatory arrests and sentences, conditions of work, modes of punishment, together with the racist erasure of the significant contributions made by Black convicts as a result of racist coercion. Just as it is difficult to imagine how much is owed to convicts relegated to penal servitude during the 19th and 20th centuries, we find it difficult today to feel a connection with the prisoners who produce a rising number of commodities that we take for granted in our daily lives. In the state of California, public colleges and universities are provided with furniture produced by prisoners, the vast majority of whom are Latino and Black. There are aspects of our history that we need to interrogate and rethink, the recognition of which may help us to adopt more complicated, critical postures towards present and the future. I have focused on the work of a few scholars whose work urges us to raise questions about the past, present, and future. Curtin, for example, is not simply content with offering us the possibility of re-examining the place of mining and steelwork in the lives of Black people in Alabama. She also uses her research to urge us to think about the uncanny parallels between the convict lease system in the 19th century and prison privatization in the 21st. In the late 19th century, coal companies wished to keep their skilled prison laborers for as long as they could, leading to denial of, quote, short time. Today, a slightly different economic incentive can lead to similar consequences. CCA, or the Corrections Corporation of America, is paid per prisoner. If the supply dries up or too many are released too early, their profits are affected. Longer prison terms, greater profits. But the larger point is that the profit motives promotes the expansion of imprisonment. I feel like we have to just sit with that for a second. The persistence of the prison as the main form of punishment, with its racist and sexist dimensions, has created this historical continuity between the 19th and early 20th century convict lease system and the privatized prison business today. While the convict lease system was legally abolished, its structures of exploitation have reemerged in the patterns of privatization and more generally in the wide-ranging corporatization of punishment that has produced a prison industrial complex. If the prison continues to dominate the landscape of punishment throughout this century and into the next, what might await coming generations of impoverished African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans and Asian Americans? Given the parallels between the prison and slavery, a productive exercise might consist in speculating about what the present might look like if slavery or its successor, the convict lease system, had not been abolished.
To be sure, I'm not suggesting that the abolition of slavery and the lease system has produced an era of equality and justice. On the contrary, racism what is this word?
Surreptitiously.
Racism surreptitiously defines social and economic structures in ways that are different to identify and thus are much more damaging. In some states, for example, more than a third of Black men have been labeled felons. In Alabama and Florida, once a felon, always a felon, which entails a loss of status as rights-bearing citizens. One of the grave consequences of the powerful reach of the prison was the 2000 election of George W. Bush as president. If only the black men and women denied the right to vote because of an actual or presumed felony record had been allowed to cast their ballots, Bush would not be in the White House today. This was written in 2003, by the way. And perhaps we would not be dealing with the awful cost of the war on terrorism declared during the first year of his administration. If not for his election, the people of Iraq might not have suffered death, destruction, and environmental poisoning by the U.S. military forces. As appalling as the current political situation may be, imagine what our lives might have become if we were still grappling with the institution of slavery, or the convict lease system, or racial segregation. But we do not have to speculate about living with the consequences of the prison. There is more than enough evidence in the lives of men and women who have been claimed by ever more repressive institutions and who are denied access to their families, their communities, to educational opportunities, to productive and creative work, to physical and mental recreation, and there is even more compelling evidence about the damage wrought by the expansion of the prison system in the schools located in poor communities of color that replicate the structures and regimes of the prison. When children attend schools that place greater value on discipline and security than one of knowledge and intellectual development, they are attending prep schools for prison. If this is the predicament we face today, what might the future hold if the prison system acquires an even greater presence in our society? In the 19th century, anti-slavery activists insisted that as long as slavery continued, the future of democracy was bleak indeed. In the 21st century, anti-prison activists insist that a fundamental requirement for the revitalization of democracy is the long overdue abolition of the prison system. And that's chapter 2.
So now, last week, just for the folks who this is their first time, what we did was we had time for conversation, and generally the conversation at first had mostly to do with the reading, but if we end up just hanging out and embroidering, that's also totally fine. But just the important thing is, if folks just want to hang out, you're welcome to hang out. If you have to go, you're welcome to go. We're going to be doing this for the next 12 weeks. And the goal, like we said at the beginning, is just to learn together and to read together. So yeah, well, I'll stop talking and we can just talk.
I just wanted to say something in reaction to the last part of the chapter of Florida being one of the states that if someone is sent to jail there or sent to prison, they therefore lose their right to vote. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past week, I think that has been lifted if they don't have, if they're not on parole, I believe, or something. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Does anyone know how to explain it better?
I haven't heard that about it being lifted, but I can Google it quickly.
Thank you, Olivia.
That makes sense. What you just said makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's more than law that keeps an institution in power. So just because the laws change doesn't mean that the consciousness of the people, the attitudes of the people, the way people approached right and wrong, and who they pointed the finger at first didn't change. Consciousness did not change with the 13th Amendment, and it's taken a long time. And now I understand it better because I didn't know all these things that were referred to in the article about how Black people were still considered subhuman beings. And I find it very interesting. We didn't understand this before.
Totally.
It's important what you're doing, but these readings are really important.
I agree.
You
I
were
just
totally
watched
right,
the-
Ryan.
What's that, Olivia?
You were totally right.
Nice.
They, which I figured you were. Yeah, so now voters that were previously felons in Florida can vote in this year's election.
That's
Which
awesome.
is very cool.
That's really amazing and overdue. But that doesn't apply to people who are still in prisons, right?
Right.
Sadly. And I think if they're on parole or probation, it also doesn't count. Like they can't vote. But still, it's like a baby step to a positive direction, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Olivia, would you mind recapping or reading to us what you read?
Oh, me, Olivia. Yes, I'm just reading an article from the Orlando Weekly that was from a couple days ago. And I guess there was some desire for the federal judge to delay his order to grant voting rights to Florida felons, and he refused to delay the
Good.
order. Yeah.
Nice.
I put a New York Times article in the chat bar about the ruling.
Thank you, Rachel.
Is it still, it's restricted in California, right? Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I believe so because there's currently an initiative to try to change that, and that's something I put on the daily tasks today.
Should you say more about what that is?
I can look it up and read
Or
about
no,
it.
just about the daily tasks.
Oh, yeah, well, basically every day I've been updating a daily schedule of ways to engage in actions right now towards the movement for Black Lives. And this specific one is called Free the Vote California. And let me see. Did you know that nearly 50,000 voters are prevented from casting a ballot in California each year? These individuals are members of our community, our friends, family, and loved ones. Voting is an essential attribute to a healthy democracy. Exercising one's rights at the ballot box should not be reserved for only part of the population. That's why I ask you to join me in championing ACA 6, a bill to support the right to vote for those who have served their sentences and are on parole supervision. ACA 6 was introduced earlier this year by California Assembly members to bring the issue of felony disenfranchisement to the ballot in 2020. We are closer than ever before to solidifying the right to vote for Californians on parole, but we need your help. Felony disenfranchisement was enacted more than a century ago as a way of undermining the political power of Black and Brown communities. This practice serves no legitimate law enforcement, public policy, or public safety purposes, and only punishes and marginalizes already vulnerable populations. We know that when people affected by the criminal justice system remain connected to their families and communities by exercising their rights to vote, for example, they are more successful upon release, benefiting us all. ACA 6 would end the harmful practice of felony disenfranchisement by providing voters the opportunity to amend the California Constitution and restore the right to vote immediately upon a person's release from prison. Please help us protect our democracy. Sign the petition to show your support for ACA today. I'll put that in the chat. Margaret says, Christy and I joined an organization this week called White People for Black Lives that is doing important work here in LA and all over the US. Yes, I love White People for Black Lives. That's the chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice, Surge in Los Angeles. And they do some amazing work, including really great phone banking, if anyone's interested in banking. They've been doing weekly phone bank sessions that are, in my opinion, really fun. I actually help run the phone bank now because I enjoy it so much. But it's also just a really great way to, you know, engage in real work right now.
Her descriptions of the prison industrial complex are so chilling, like the present day when she's writing examples of like the universities in California.
Yeah, the furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was touching. Who would know that?
Have you guys seen 13th?
Yes, it's so crazy and so
Watched it last
good.
night for the first time, and it is, you know, Angela Davis is in it, and she speaks to these problems, and it connects like the visual to what we're reading about right now in a really important way. Would highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a really amazing documentary. I mean, I recently rewatched it just so I can like recap it because it goes through so many important things, particularly about this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually streaming on YouTube right now for free. Like Netflix put it on YouTube for everyone to watch for free if you don't have that.
Title?
It's called 13th.
Okay.
As in the 13th Amendment.
Thank you.
I've actually watched that documentary on Netflix, and it's informative. And I would want to watch it again because I know that I've missed the first time around. I missed some of the information that they were giving. So
Yeah.
I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah.
Do a screening.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be great.
What is the 13th Amendment?
It's the abolishment of slavery, except it's very carefully worded to make it so if someone is sent to prison, that they can therefore become a slave, like slave labor.
And like that section that I was like, we need to take pause for a moment. You could literally be imprisoned for idling, for being quote.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we are all well aware that there were some pretty intensely racist loopholes and intentions behind that, but also just like when I read that, I was so floored because what does that even mean, you know?
Yeah, it's got a whole mindset included in it.
Wait, what saying that only black people could be convicted of that? Or that was how they characterized blacks?
It was specific black codes, which are laws that only affect black people, and it would be, I forget what the word is, like duly. It's I could find it in the thing, and
Yeah, we could read that again.
I could read that paragraph again. Just take me a second.
Margaret says, "I'm sorry that your voice isn't working, Margaret." She says, "There's also a documentary just out called, quote, 'We Cried Power,' about the fight for racial justice." I'll put that in the chat. Right. And looks like they're doing a lot of screenings right now.
All right, so I'll just read the one paragraph that really pertains to the 13th Amendment and how, like, there's specific laws for black people after after the 13th Amendment, the abolition of slavery. So it says, particularly in the United States, race has always played a central role in constructing presumptions of criminality. After the abolition of slavery, former slave states passed new legislation revising the slave codes in order to regulate the behavior of free blacks in ways similar to those that had existed during slavery. The new black codes prescribed a range of actions such as vagrancy, absence from work, breach of job contracts, the possession of firearms, and insulting gestures or acts. They were criminalized only when the person charged was black. With the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, slavery and involuntary servitude were putatively abolished. However, there was a significant exception. In the wording of the amendment, slavery and involuntary servitude were abolished, quote, "except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted," end quote. According to the black codes, there were crimes defined by state law for which only black people could be, quote, "duly convicted." Thus, former slaves who had recently been extricated from a condition of hard labor for life could be legally sentenced to penal servitude. So yeah, people just invented laws specifically for black people, such as idling or making insulting gesture that could then send them to jail for
Right.
probably could be for life too. I have a list here on my phone. I don't know how I can get it on the chat because it's on Instagram, but it's of products sold by companies using prison labor today. And I'll just go through a couple quick, there's like...
You could take, can I suggest something? You could take a screenshot, save it to photos, and then pull it into the chat. You know what I'm trying to say?
I think so, yeah. Maya's helping me right now.
She can also
You could read it out loud too.
Yeah, but then you'd have to write it down, and we have our hands busy right now.
Well, here, we'll both read it out loud and we'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll double whammy.
That's what I call wonderful.
Give it a second.
How do you normally send links to yourself? Or like
I could just send it to you.
Maya? Okay. Sorry.
What?
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna. I think we just put it up on the chat. But I can read a few unless Lauren you want to say something.
No, go for it.
So a few that come to mind are, well, all of these are kind of crazy. So Febreze, Tampax tampons, Always pads and panty liners, Gain laundry detergent, let's see, Gillette razors, Venus razors, Crest toothpaste, Oral-B products, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, Aquafina, Gatorade, Starbucks bottled, I can't read that word, Life Water, Ocean Spray, Pam, Orville Redenbacher's, let's see, Tylenol, Visine, um, Dixie products like those cups that everyone uses, Chef Boyardee, snack packs, Aunt Jemima's products, which actually is changing their name now.
Right.
Peter Pan peanut butter, Benadryl, Band-Aids, Flonase, Tums, Nicorette, Flintstones gummies. There's like 50 more things on the list.
Holy smokes.
So that's, yeah, a big shock.
It's basically everything inside of CVS.
Yeah, basically everything in TV.
But they're probably just a few corporations, because a lot of the brands are like Colgate Palmolive or something like that, some larger corporation that owns all those products.
Totally. Yeah, you're right.
And their ancestors were the original slave owners too.
Probably.
It is systemic. That was a revelation to me in the last few weeks when racism was referred to as systemic. I really, really think that was an important distinction that was made.
So in terms of thinking about history and progress as a continuum, it's interesting to think that between roughly 1860, in the 1860s when the 13th Amendment was ratified, and the 1940s when this basically slave labor in prisons, which was called peonage, was abolished, at least on paper. That was 80 years, and now we're 80 years since that moment. Right. So it's like there's these 80-year cycles that this movement for abolitionist movements and the penal system has been taking place. If you like, I found a really good quote that sort of describes the specifics about peonage. That will take about 3 minutes to read. Should I read it?
Absolutely.
Okay. This was something that I found on social media from a historian named Damon Roberts, and he posted this on Wednesday, and then I reposted it, but I think it's very clear. In 1866, 1 year after the 13th Amendment was ratified, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina began to lease out convicts for labor, a system called peonage. This made the business of arresting blacks very lucrative, which is why hundreds of white men were hired by these states as police officers. Their primary responsibility was to search out and arrest blacks who were in violation of black codes. Once arrested, these men, women, and children would be leased to plantations where they would harvest cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane, or they'd be leased to work at coal mines or railroad companies. The owners of these businesses would pay the state for every prisoner who worked for them prison labor. It is believed that after the passing of the 13th Amendment, more than 800,000 blacks were part of the system of peonage or re-enslavement through the prison system. Peonage didn't end until after World War II began around 1940. This is how it happened. The 13th Amendment declared that, quote, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Did you catch that? It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude could occur except as a punishment for a crime. Lawmakers used this phrase to make petty offenses crimes. When blacks were found guilty of committing these crimes, they were imprisoned and then leased out to the same businesses that lost slaves after the passing of the 13th Amendment. This system of convict labor is called peonage. The majority of white Southern farmers and business owners hated the 13th Amendment because it took away slave labor. As a way to appease them, the federal government turned a blind eye when Southern states used this clause in the 13th Amendment to establish laws called black codes. Here are some examples of black codes. In Louisiana, it was illegal for a black man to preach to black congregations without special permission in writing from the president of the police. If caught, he could be arrested and fined. If he could not pay the fines, which were unbelievably high, he would be forced to work for an individual or go to jail or prison, where he would work until his debt was paid off. If a black person did not have a job, he or she could be arrested and imprisoned on the charge of vagrancy or loitering.
Oh.
This next black code will make you cringe. In South Carolina, if the parent of a black child was considered vagrant, the judicial system allowed the police and or the government agencies to, quote, apprentice the child to an employer. Males could be held until the age of 21, and females could be held until they were 18. Their owner had the legal right to inflict punishment on the child for disobedience and to recapture them if they ran away. This peonage is an example of systemic racism, racism established and perpetuated by government systems. Slavery was made legal by the US government. Segregation, black codes, Jim Crow, and peonage were all made legal by the government and upheld by the judicial system. These acts of racism were built into the system, which is the term systemic racism. This part of, quote, black history that most of us were never told about.
That's powerful. How do we get this information out to people?
I think we're doing it. We're starting to.
Yeah, we are, but it's sort of like preaching to the choir.
I don't know. I think we're all on a kind of our own journey of learning who we are and what we mean in this.
I get it. I'm just saying a broader audience needs to know this stuff. A much broad. I mean, it's a shift in consciousness that we need. A paradigm shift. And how's it going to happen? How's it going to happen if it's not communicated?
Well, I think just to push Ines' point further, I think part of what needs to happen is that we need to educate ourselves deeply, like really doing this work by reading and engaging with
Yeah.
organizing and effort that's gone into reading these texts to educate ourselves. And then from there, on a large scale, I do believe that education will change the world, you know, I mean, because we are just made up of individuals, and the more we educate ourselves, we can therefore educate others and call people in. You know, that's, Margaret mentioned White People for Black Lives, which is a chapter of Surge showing up for racial justice. And that's a group that for the past decade has been focused on organizing white people around anti-racism. And one of their main practices is calling people in instead of just calling people out, you know? And the difference is that instead of just shitting on someone for saying something racist or saying something hateful or
just someone that doesn't know that, like someone that really thinks that saying all lives matter is the actual proper way of talking about equality.
Instead of just, attacking that person, there are ways to communicate and educate them and educate yourself through that process that will change their understanding and change how they relate to this system. So the work really has to be done on an individual level, but obviously this issue is systemic, but I believe that part of the way to change it is by doing what we're doing right now, which is sitting and reading, and really deep.
No, I'm not belittling or minimizing this process. I'm just pointing to I'm thinking about what Lauren said about how it was like 280-year cycles recently that brought about certain levels of change. And a lot of that has happened because of the, the way we've been able to print books. Before the Gutenberg press, we didn't have that kind of communication of information. But now, in the last 150 years, communication has exploded. So that's promoting change right there. But this information is kind of like another thing comes out of metabolics is artists have to create on the same level, how does it go, that society destroys things, something like that. I'm sorry, I'm going to slaughter that. I'm sorry, I apologize. But so we are artists banding together. And so, I'm a rabblerizer. We all are, right? Once you get hooked onto the truth and you want to communicate it, you have to think about ways to communicate it, I think, is what I'm saying. And it's great for us to be doing this. I'm getting a deep education here, but how do we communicate it?
I guess for me, it's like I feel like I'm like the classic, like classic white privilege, and just learning so much about
right
what in consuming. I'm reading Robin DiAngelo's book right now about white fragility, and it's just like when you're somebody that you feel like you're like I'm bigger than this. I know more about this, and then just get slapped in the face with such an intense reality. It's just like
right.
Anything about who I am and where I fit in this world, and it's great because that's where you start to get more muscles. I feel like, to answer your question, in my opinion, is just like how we make a change is all of us are getting so much stronger in our understanding, and we can share that so much more.
Right.
And we can be.
I'm just thinking about what are the ways, because I'm a communicator. I do a lot of books and posters and graphics, and I'm thinking, how do you get this kind of data out there? That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is that for me, it's been interesting to have this moment where I'm like connecting to information that has been out for so long, and I think that's something that's really interesting to think about. It's like this, I don't know, when was 13th that documentary made?
2017, I think.
Yeah. It's like, and I watched it for the first time recently, and it was like, and even then, like, none of that information was brand new. It was just packaged in a way that was like on Netflix and accessible. And it just kind of shocked me to realize, this information has been out there. So it's interesting to me to think about, like, to Maya's point of like, okay, so if having the information accessible doesn't necessarily make the change, like what's our individual roles or our collective roles in communicating.
Yeah.
Something that Ryan and I have been doing, and that has really helped both of us in these conversations, is we've been patrolling, for lack of a better word, Facebook groups based off of either geographical location. Like we're living in Vermont right now. We are on a lot of local Facebook groups here. And whenever someone says something that's ill-informed, we have now created a script that we basically copy and paste because it's mostly the same stuff.
Right. Great. That's good.
But it's like, it's not just a script of like opinions, it's descriptive facts with like, you know, peer-reviewed essays and
Right.
real data and things that you can, you know, do further reading about and films to watch. And so it's not just like, you know, like I said, like if someone says all lives matter, a lot of people will be like, fuck you, you're a racist, like you don't get it, like they just like attack. But I feel like genuinely what we've noticed, because you end up in these conversation streams where like you can actually respond to you and you respond again. We've had like 20 comments with someone at some point.
Yeah.
Like, basically what we've noticed is most people are literally just ill-informed. It's not, most people actually know.
They just don't know how
know
to,
what they're talking about.
and they don't understand the facts of the situation, or like even people that I know, like in my family that I've had to have a conversation with and be like, this may be that you're in a bubble of white people living in Vermont. Like there's a reality here, you know, that is, and having those conversations, and those conversations are really hard,
But they get easier, I guess is what I'm
yeah,
trying to say. Like
they because we put in like this practice of online, I feel like I could have a conversation like well
and like
in person.
now we know these facts because it's so habitual, because we've had like 600 of these conversations. We can be like, oh well, now I remember that actually this is the data point, or like, have you read this? Or like you can, instead of just getting emotional, which like is difficult obviously, and that takes a lot of effort,
a lot of restraint,
but at least, you know, both of us are white. We feel that it is our white privilege to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations because part of the work right now, like, is literally just educating white people, and what Serge calls calling in your cousins or collecting your cousins. And that's something that the civil rights movement has been saying for decades, that white people need to organize, and they need to organize other white people around anti-racism. And that doesn't mean it has to be a white space or a space that's like devoted to educating white people, but it does mean that it's intentionally talking to white people about racism and anti-racism, and not just that being a system where people who experience racism have to put in the work to teach about anti-racism. That is then taking the onus on to yourself to have those conversations.
Well, the best way to not get emotional is to stick to the facts and not get sucked into any derogatory, you know, and it's comments that people make. But when you're informed, like you said, I mean, we all learned things tonight that we can use in a discussion, you know, that with people that don't see, you know, don't see what's going on.
Hey, Maya. Do you have you ever dove into Nextdoor?
Yes.
Because I imagine that's a good source.
That's a very great idea.
Good point. Good point. Oh my God.
Some next door action. I like that.
What, hun?
Next door.
Great. Brilliant.
The bummer thing is that I guess it's the what Nextdoor is trying to achieve is that you can't dive into like what you're doing with Facebook. You can dive into as many communities as you want. But Nextdoor, you're kind of isolated with where you live, and then that's it. But those areas it gets pretty nasty on those websites.
yeah, it's been pretty crazy, at least here for Facebook stuff. But you know, there's like a very small percentage of people that you're never going to change their mind. They're like way far down the conspiracy theory holes, and you know, but a lot of people, yeah, they just like need help understanding the situation, and they might ask questions that seem ridiculous and really kind of uncool, but it's because a lot of people just really don't understand this issue at all.
I think if people are respectful, and the person who really is uninformed really believes that you're being respectful, if you really are sincerely respectful of them, they'll listen more. I don't know if it'll make a big difference, but you can't be derogatory to people that you want to try to open their minds.
Yeah, definitely.
I keep thinking about the silkscreen workshops that usually happen on Thursday night. I've got all these concepts I've been thinking about and talking to Jerry Allen about. I'm at the point of buying silk screens and all the equipment and putting it in my garage and doing it myself because I really miss that.
The silk screening.
We miss it too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Are you kidding? Understandably.
Thanks for that.
God, do I miss it? Yeah.
Has anyone here been in jail or been in prison? I don't know, that might be a personal question, but.
I have a really good friend that is a felon. And their lives are really affected by it. There's certain jobs, a lot of jobs, they can't get work a lot of times. This is a really awful time for my friend. There are certain kind of jobs, like in school systems. I mean, there's so many categories of employment that are closed off to them. I don't know that it's justifiable, but it's the way it is.
Very punitive system.
Not to say, not the least of which is an embarrassment, you know?
I enjoyed sharing the reading more tonight.
Yeah, that was great.
Good to see you, Kai.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. You know, confined to my apartment most of the time. How are you doing?
Good, good. Same.
What's that been like?
What?
What's that been like in New York?
It's been strange. I mean, I've not, seen or talked to like anybody face to face in a really long time except for my partner, and it's starting to open up a little bit more, and also the weather's nicer, so more people are going outside, and I'm getting outside, which is healthier because I definitely was going crazy.
Yeah.
But also the city opening up is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, yeah. My mother's in assisted living in Pennsylvania, and there has been only one death there, maybe 2 or 3 infections. They've kept a good handle on it. And today I read that they were going to start, they are anticipating opening up, and I'm like in terror because my mother's like 95.
Wow.
I don't want her, they shut down, they keep the rules are strict, doing the right thing.
Bye, Mom.
Bye, everybody. I'm going to go get the last minutes of daylight. Thank you so much, Maya and Ryan, and everyone who read, Livia. Really nice to spend Juneteenth with all of you.
Yeah, happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Thank you. Thank you for doing all this, Lauren.
Thank you.
Ryan, do you have any more information about the products made by the prison system? Because I really, that just, I haven't heard about that. I thought, I've heard about like they make the license plates.
Yeah,
in
and like
prison.
coat hangers. I don't, but I could try to find some more.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to look for some more too, because it's because that's quite a crossover of.
Yeah.
I had no
intent.
idea, other than like what you were saying, Olan, with the license plates. I had absolutely no idea.
Has that been posted yet?
I put that in the chat.
Chat? Yeah, that's valuable. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like what kind of machinations in law did they
Here-
put to make that happen?
Here's just a few that I found. There isn't many here, but inmates sew uniforms for McDonald's.
Jesus.
What?
Yeah. AT&T has used inmates in its call centers. BP sent inmates to clean up its oil spill in the Gulf Coast.
No.
In the 90s, Victoria's Secret contracted with a company that used prison labor to sew some of its garments. And up until 2016, Whole Foods sourced fish through a third party that used prison labor.
Wow.
Whole Foods.
I believe Whole Foods still used prison labor until the Black Lives Matter movement recently urged them to stop.
I think, yeah.
I remember.
Until 2015, Whole Foods sold goat cheese and tilapia from companies that use prison labor, paying pennies on the dollar in wages. After pushback from consumers, the company stopped selling products that use inmate labor. So they don't anymore, but
They don't?
not since 2015.
So what they did is they paid them $2 an hour. The company got $10 an hour, and they made the difference. I mean, oh my God, that is awful. Pay them what they're worth. If they're worth that, you pay them, period. Right?
Well, to have that be thought of as a viable form of labor, it's kind of a captive audience there for like.
I just think it's important to, really highlight that capitalism is the driving force for the prison industrial complex, especially with the privatization of prison.
Right. Capitalism, you got it.
All right, so I just put another list in the chat, but I could scroll through and read some off.
Thanks, Brian.
Walmart says it won't sell products made with prison labor, but the company still contracts companies that use inmates' labor to dispose of customer returns in excess inventory. So they use it. In the 1990s, Microsoft hired. In the 1990s, Microsoft hired Washington state prisoners to package software and mouses. At the time, a spokesman said, quote, "We don't see this as a negative." Let's see. Nintendo, Target. In 2000, Target used suppliers that rely on prison labor. Early in the 90s, big companies like AT&T and Microsoft hired inmates, but most backed away after the arrangements were exposed. Some big companies, such as Target, however, still use suppliers that employ prisoners. Eddie Bauer.
Eddie Bauer?
Yeah, Eddie Bauer is among the many clothing companies that has used prison labor in the past to sew clothes.
Well, this same guy owns Eddie Bauer, Victoria's Secret, Express.
Yep. Boeing, the plane maker, I think. In the 1990s, Boeing used a subcontractor to cut airplane components. The employees were prisoners making $7 an hour for work that typically paid union wages of $30 an hour. Macy's department store, Wendy's, Verizon, McDonald's, JCPenney, which is going out of business, Sprint. The telecom company Sprint uses inmates in call centers to provide customer service. Honda Motor Company, Fruit of the Loom, Nordstrom, Motorola, Koch Industries, that's like a big one.
I bet it is. You mean the Koch brothers?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I wouldn't be surprised if they own Victoria's Secret and Eddie Bauer.
Well, the original list, yeah.
Les Wexner.
Yeah.
Les Wexner owns those.
Oh, well, we got to find out about him.
IBM, Johnson & Johnson, let's see, United Airlines, State Farm Insurance, American Express, and there's more on the list, but I skipped.
All over the place.
Yeah, it's basically just everywhere.
That Instagram post is great. I love that handwritten.
Right?
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
like.
I didn't know you were still here, Alex.
You know what? I'm having a really hard time. I can't see. My whole screen is like blacked out with you guys. So, you know, but I'm here.
How's it going?
We can get this chat, can't we? Because there's a lot of information in the chat tonight.
You can save it.
You can save the chat. We'll save it to your computer.
Press file.
There's 3 little dots next to file on the right side. Click it and it says save chat.
Right, got it. Okay, I'm going to put it in my metabolic folder. I have a metabolic folder.
I like that.
Yeah, and I have different categories too.
Hey, Maria, Lauren does a great job of posting. I think what she read tonight, she's posting on her Facebook. It looks, there's a lot of stuff that she's putting on there. If you wanted to copy and paste that and send it to other people. You were asking how to reach people. I believe what she read, she's posted.
Hold on just a second. Oh, you know what? This gets saved automatically into a folder, dated, and then the date and time, interdependence, embroidery circle, and then about 10 digits. Okay. All right. Alex, is that what you were referring to or something else?
No, Facebook.
Facebook. Okay. Wake up, Maria. Wake up. Huh. Where did it go, though? I have to find it.
All right, I'm gonna get ready for bed because it's after 11 here, but I think Maya's gonna stay on for a second.
Good night, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Brian,
Ryan.
for reading.
Maya, for reading.
Sweet dreams.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, I'm gonna go too. Good night.
Good night, Rachel.
See everyone.
I'm off too.
Bye, Arlene.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Me too. Bye.
Bye, Melinda. It's good to see you.
Yeah, same.
Does anybody know where this chat folder lands?
No, you'll just have to go and find her and find it. Just type in
Maybe your download.
Okay, we'll do.
Probably in your downloads.
Oh, it probably went to downloads. You're right. You're right.
Maria, you're good with computers. Come on.
What, honey? What, honey?
You're good with computers.
Yeah, I am, but still. No, it's not in. Oh, wait. It's not in downloads. Where the hell did it go? Okay, I'll go into Finder. All right.
Embroidery so far.
My embroidery is getting really interesting. It's
Whoa,
good
that's,
from far, but far from good. Maybe, I don't know. There it is.
that's so pretty.
You're frozen, Alex. Oh wait.
Yeah, I know.
You're back.
Okay,
I can see it for a second.
that's okay. I can't see anything, so.
It looks.
Yeah, you got the poppies, pink poppies.
I got poppies. Yes.
I just started tonight, but I have the onion. I think it's an onion.
Yep, it's an onion.
Oh,
looks
I wish
good.
I could see.
Hey Maria, if you hit the 3 little buttons where it says save chat,
Yeah.
then you save chat, like right where those buttons are, go above and it says chat saved and it says save find. You can hit finder. Show in finder.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Save chat.
Hit the 3 buttons, right? And see and then do save chat.
Right.
And then the minute you press the button and let go, it says show in finder. Do you see like right above the three buttons?
I see that, but it hasn't. I did exactly what you said, but so far it doesn't say, give me an option to show in Finder.
Oh, it doesn't let you have like a little blue lettering that says show in finder?
Not yet. Not. I press save chat. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay. Yeah, but I see it in Finder. It comes, the folder comes up, but I have to find the path to it.
I just Googled it. It's in documents.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll go by date. All right. Oh, you know what? It goes, Zoom has created a folder in documents, and both Oland's choir and any interdependence thing we've done is in there. Cool. You have to consciously save the chat.
Yes.
You just, you know what I mean? It doesn't do it automatically.
No, it does not.
But I have a metabolic folder, so I'm going to put everything in there. So I can find it later.
How does it feel to be read to on Zoom?
Great. Absolutely fabulous.
Is there any feedback y'all have?
What's that?
What kind of
feedback? I would say that the text was like pretty graphic for at parts, and I just worry about it triggering for people. The chains and the hardware described, and so I want to be sensitive to that, you know.
Well, listen, they experienced it.
Of course, I'm in no way I don't want to underplay what they went through.
No, but I mean, I just feel the least I can do is listen and be a witness.
Of course.
Even if it is so many years after the fact, it is very bad.
Hey, Maya, I loved how you paused.
It's really bad. It's just after the fact. And I also feel like reconciling our own relationships to racism, it's such a personal, I've been finding it's been this kind of personal journey, you know, going back through my memories, you know, and yeah, it's very painful. I get angry about how whitewashed my education was.
Right. History has been whitewashed. I never, before this past 2 weeks, I had never thought much about all of the statues that are from, you know, Confederate so-called heroes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, they just were placed there and everybody just didn't even see them anymore.
Well, but yeah, we just accepted it. And now people are saying, wait a minute, we can't have that in our country.
Why did it take so long?
I watched that John Oliver that I think Lauren had asked us to watch if you had a chance. and it explains the times where those statues were put up, were times where, you know, they needed to politically charge certain, you know, candidates and stuff. And it's really interesting on when they placed those statues. Is significant on why they did it politically.
And where, yeah.
You mean like
And where,
every time they put up a statue, there were political undertones for that particular statue or something?
yeah, it was to,
Political, yeah.
Alex,
That's pretty powerful.
Alex, you were gonna give feedback and then.
yeah, you know, I really, I appreciated when you stopped and paused. That was like, I was feeling exactly what you were feeling. Like my facial expressions were like, I looked, when you were reading, it was exactly when you were pausing. I was like, wow, that like, I'm thankful for you to pause. And I thought it would be great to like, the read is so deep, you know, it's so much to rewind and to take in. And some things we know and some things are new to us, but I thought it'd be almost great to stop and almost talk about something that you had just talked about in that moment. I thought it would almost maybe be important to like, you know, let's talk about that part of it and then keep going, maybe just a little bit of a little interlude of it. But it was great. I'm very thankful for you to read that. And it was just very heavy. But I love that you pause for the cause. That's how I was feeling it the same way. It's kind of like breathing. You know, I got to take a breath. I got to take things in, and then we're going to speak. And sometimes reading, it just kind of keeps going. And so I appreciated that.
Yeah, and I asked that question about anybody going to prison because I think like we can't make the assumption that nobody that we know hasn't, or anybody in our group, and how, you know, they might have a particular something to add to the conversation that none of us could.
People are very sensitive about that.
I understand. I guess just again, I don't know. I'm trying to be sensitive to. I've never been to prison, but I've been locked up.
Really?
Yeah.
Like for a demonstration or something like that?
No, as a kid.
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry.
It's okay. I brought it up. Juvenile hall.
You know, I was trying to stay on course of like my mind kept going to like what's happening on the borders and the encampments that they're holding people, and how they're kind of like, there's different things that are happening right now that they're just, you know, it's kind of lawlessness or something that's happening there that I don't agree with. And my mind kept going to like what's happening there. And I know this is a moment here, but it's kind of like, it's everything that's happening. It's not just this movement. It's gonna bring all these movements together. And just kept thinking about it, about what's happening there. You know, that's unjust.
People
are doing a lot of questioning, and you realize you've made assumptions for so long. I mean, I've been embarrassed by my own racism when I think about what I perceive as racism. I think, oh my God, that's a racist thought, you know?
Rachel, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about content warnings, and I think that's really a great idea. Maybe I could go through, my goal is to read everything. I haven't read everything on the syllabus yet. I would like to obviously read it before I read it out loud. Just, you know, to be careful and prepared, but I think it would be a good idea to give content warnings at the beginning and maybe before I say things. Like, it feels like, you know, for me, I personally feel it's an emotional experience to say those things out loud, even, you know, like a lot of
I can
a lot of this work is like you said, very personal. Like this is meant to be read, you know, in your mind almost, or read by someone who's written it. But it feels like as just reading it out loud, it brings a reality, and like that, you know, I think we should be sensitive to the fact that these are really painful histories, and also, yeah, maybe we could, maybe I'll highlight areas that maybe we'll give content warnings for, just to say like, this is about to be graphic, and if folks want to leave the room for a second, that's okay, and you can come back in, or if you want to turn your sound off for a second, that's okay. I appreciate that.
Sure, and I want to read your readings too before I come, so I can add more to the conversation and to, you know.
A lot of them are online accessible. You can also obviously buy the physical copies, but
Yeah, which I'm trying to do, build my library. So.
And Maya, you really got into a flow, like in the middle of it. I was really like, you know, listening to you, and
Yeah.
you know, and your voices are a big deal. Like hearing your Livia's voice and Ryan, and you all kind of got into a flow in the middle, and I really appreciated that. Just so you know, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think it's good to kind of trade it
So
off.
you know that, you know, that we're hearing, we're feeling it, you know.
Maybe one of the things that we should do too is just set up every week with a breakout room. Going back to what you were saying, so if somebody wants to just go out for a second, they can, and they can. Like we just always have it open. And I don't know. We should do a test next week if one of us actually has to be sitting in there, or if it's just,
Couldn't we just turn the volume off if somebody gets a warning? If we hear a warning, wouldn't it be just easy to just turn off your volume? And then we can get a visual cue when it has passed.
another option is that they can close the Zoom and then reopen the Zoom. Because I think with breakout rooms, you have to, as the host, send someone to the breakout room.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I think you have to.
Well, let's try it right now. We're here.
Okay, let's try it.
Let's
From what I've experienced thus far, I think you have to send them to a breakout room, and then I can go to the breakout room.
Okay, let me see. I'm looking right now. It says assign 6 participants into one breakout room automatically or manually. So let's see. I'm going to try.
Just assign 2.
But what I'm saying is like only you can, as the host, you have that option. But for me as a participant, I couldn't, oh, this is going to be intense. You know what I mean? Like if I were to give that warning, you would have to make a breakout room for everyone.
I see. And then you'd have to disrupt the reading. Cindy, I just added you to a breakout room. Well, no, I didn't.
No.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Maya. You do have to move. I just moved Cindy. Although you're still here.
I'm still here. I didn't get a last time we tried it, I got a notice that said, do you want to join the breakout room? I didn't get that this time.
Okay, Alex, I'm going to move you too. Let's see what happens. Okay, now it says that Alex and Cindy are both in breakout room 2, but I still see you.
If I have to push anything, I can't, because I can't see anything.
Oh, okay.
You can try me.
Okay, well, I don't want to send everybody to the room. Okay, I'll try you. Okay, I'm moving Rachel. Okay, bye, Rachel.
No, she's still here.
I'm not getting the prompt.
I think the easier option
Maybe
for them to just leave.
Oh, here it is.
Here, I got a breakout room now. Here it is. I'm gonna join the breakout room.
Oh, and then somebody could just call people to come back.
I don't know. Let me text them and see. Let's see. Oh, we lost.
No, they're in the breakout room.
Where did Maya go?
She must have gone to the breakout room. No, because you got the option on your screen of joining.
Oh, you did? You got a message that said, do you want to join?
Yeah. But I didn't want to go, so.
Okay, sit here for a second. I'm going to see if I jump into the room. Where do I do that? Let's see.
No, it had to give you a, are you a administrator?
Yeah.
Because administrators may see different things than participants. But I got this a message that said, join breakout room. You've been invited to join the breakout room. And then it said join breakout room. And the other option was later. So I pressed later.
Okay, I just got a message from Maya to ask to join the breakout room. Let me go jump in there and see. Don't leave.
Okay.
See you in a minute.
I'm not an administrator. Okay, who's Sharon? Where are you? Hi, Rachel. You're back.
I'm back. So
I've been alone here. I don't know what happened.
I was worried. I was like, I think we left her there all alone. So that experiment worked. I mean, the host has to put you in the room, but then you can leave the room whenever you want and come back to the
That
main.
would work. That works really nice.
But then once the breakout rooms are there, we're back.
Hi. I'm posting that products sold by companies, the handwritten list. What would be I'm trying to find the right wording to introduce the list. Does this sound right to say it like this? Can you hear me, Rachel?
Corporations that use convict labor.
Right. Is it correct to say the origins of prison labor go back to slavery?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it how would you say prison labor is like monetized by large corporations, underpaying significantly, underpaying?
I don't know. I think that they're probably paying a subcontractor that's employing.
Well, the prison labor is controlled by large corporations and they hire the prison labor, but they significantly underpaid the prison labor.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say is like, what's the right, prison labor economy is owned by large corporations who significantly underpay individuals producing the work. or
The products.
Oh, producing the product. Okay. Sometimes you kind of, like, I have a hard time like finding the right simple words, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Significantly underpay employees or laborers. Should I just say laborers?
In fact, convicted felons. Yeah, I mean,
Convicted, and how many black people are percentage-wise are in prisons?
I don't know. You'll have to look that up.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what the whole systemic, like if you had to connect the dots for somebody in a discussion, you need to know what the dots are. I'm trying to put it in my.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that the policing, the roots of the history of policing, they went and, after the slave patrol were over because of the Civil Rights and Emancipation Act, then they instilled these black codes and went around and hired a bunch of, sometimes even volunteers, police, to enforce the black codes in order to create the labor force.
I'm gonna put a link in the chat that might be helpful, Maria.
Oh, good.
It's the criminal justice fact sheet from the NAACP.
Oh, that's great.
So I have to save the file again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I have to update it.
All right, I think I'm good. Okay, good night. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Really, really appreciate you, making yourself vulnerable like that and helping all of us.
I love Friday nights in the embroidery circle. Let's keep it going. Yes. Yes.
My fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty good way to get educated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How much more fun could it be?
Yeah. You have fun and education all at once.
Right. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
All right. Good night.
Okay. Good night, y'all.
Well, thank you so much.
Good night. Good night, Maria.
Okay.
Good night.
Jen.
All right.
Have you guys been to Metabolic lately?
Good night.
No.
Alex.
You haven't even been there?
Good night.
Rachel.
No.
Good night, Rachel.
Is Sharon still there?
I think Sharon's just there, but I don't know where.
Sharon, where are you?
Sharon.
Your paintings.
Good night, Sharon.
Alex, how is your daughter?
She's great. She's doing
Is
great.
she there?
She's right here, yeah. She's chilling out. She's chilling out.
Hi.
She's ready for summer. COVID summer.
What do you have behind you? Is that really in your house or is that a graphic?
It's a graphic. I have, yeah.
Is that Angela Davis?
It is, yes.
Oh, that's great, Alex. Alex, I just can't wait for the silkscreen workshop again. I have this idea.
I hear you.
What, honey?
You do. Does it look like this? So does it look like
Oh, that's so
All right, these are my daughter's backgrounds, so you know how we've been doing it here.
You mean when she goes to school, she puts them behind her?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Is that cool?
That's really sweet.
Oh, I love
So sometimes I come on and I have no idea what's behind me, and then
Well, that suits you very well because you're a real sweetheart.
thank you. Lots of colors. I love all colors.
What?
I love all colors.
I know. Oh.
Thanks for
Hey,
asking.
you guys. Well, I'm gonna say goodnight as well.
Okay.
It was real fun.
Nighty night. Sleep tight.
All right, you
I'll
guys.
say bye too, and thanks you guys. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, Maria. Bye, Jen. Bye, Cynthia.
Bye,
Jen.
bye, 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 bye.
Are you guys hanging out longer?
No,
I don't care. I mean, I'm gonna just sit here and finish my row.
Hi, Alex. Oh, he left.
Oh, he left.
No,
He didn't even wait.
Olive is starting to get antsy, like she's got to go outside in a minute. I was going to try to take her before, but it was either feed me or let her out.
Yeah, feed yourself first, for sure. You have to take care of yourself first to take care of others.
Yes.
That's what the stewardess always says, right? Put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, put your oxygen mask on.
Yeah. Well, luckily I've never had to do that, but
yeah.
But okay, guys. Well,
do you think I'm getting too involved here?
No. Beautiful.
Hey, I said that.
What, honey?
We both said it's beautiful at the exact same time.
Okay. I'm really asking you honestly because I went by Michaels to get more colors and also to get more seed beads because I thought I had the right color of green because these are like it's an onion. So I'm trying to get like, you know, when an onion gets really, I don't know, what do you call it? Ripe. It starts doing those green things, you know? So I didn't have enough.
I think it's really pretty.
Yeah, okay, good. And then I started putting beads. I was like scrambling everything and I feel like I did a mission.
I really like the beads that you're using. It gives it like an iridescent, well, at least on the computer screen, it looks really iridescent and pretty. So I like it.
The way it looks. But I didn't have enough difference in the greens I already owned. So today I placed an order online at 1 p.m. at Michael's to be picked up. And I went to pick it up at 5:30. It wasn't ready, so I had to pull it myself. And the area where I was in was so dark, I had to use my phone to see the colors.
Yeah. Oh. Well, it's really nice. At least, you know, I know the computer screens are different, but from what I can see, it looks really nice.
Oh, good. All right.
It's like a professional.
It looks professional. Oh,
it
boy.
does.
Oh boy. That's really exciting. That's so exciting.
Look at mine is very amateur.
I love yours.
It's great. What are you talking about?
It looks pretty.
Is that a green fabric or is it just the light?
It's the light.
The light.
Okay.
I have poor lighting here.
She's working by candlelight.
I am. Look, I have like a little old-fashioned little desk lamp.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because this room doesn't have a proper light, so it's just these lamps that I have.
A lot of the rooms they built, but you know, until the last 2 or 3 decades, they didn't put lights in the ceiling. You know, now you see the recessed lighting everywhere. That's good. It's not the best light, but if you need light in a room, it's good.
Yeah. No, I mean, at some point I'm going to change out this fan that we have, like the ceiling fan, and add one with a light, and then that would solve the problem. But we haven't gone around to doing that.
Yeah, I get it.
But okay, Maria, it was really nice seeing you. It was really nice seeing you, Jen.
Nice seeing you guys.
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, see you guys next week. And
Yeah.
Sharon,
have a good week, everybody.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.